When leaders in business don't get along, an entire organization suffers. Hello, I am Doug Marshall, and for the next few minutes, I'll be talking to Chris Sheesley about resolving conflicts in a business. Chris is the president and founder of In Accord, a company focused on fixing workplace conflict. Chris puts derailed working relationships back on track. Owners and executives hire him when they recognize the need to bring in an objective facilitator to transform high-stakes or seemingly impossible disagreements into cooperation and productivity. With 30 years of full-time experience, a client roster of hundreds of notable organizations, and a track record of over 2,000 cases, Chris is among the most seasoned conflict management professionals on the West Coast. His formal education includes a degree in conflict resolution and a master's thesis on overcoming resistance to workplace resolution initiatives. Hey, Chris, great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Nice to see you too, Doug.
Well, I've worked with companies, Chris, where there's obvious tension between members of the upper management. And, there's no question that this keeps a company from achieving peak performance. And I'm curious, what advice do you give to the leaders of a company where this is the case?
Yeah, well, good question. And just to, echo what you're saying, we all know conflict in the workplace can be very disruptive and very challenging for folks to contend with. And it can have real profound implications on the ability for people to do their jobs and get the job done, and for the organization to achieve its mission. So I think at the highest level, the first thing we want our clients to understand is that recognizing the impact of conflict is important, and to know that there are issues that need to be addressed. It's kind of hard to quantify the effects of conflict on a workplace, but there's some interesting research. So, for example, something like 65% of performance problems can be traced back to relationship issues between employees. So it's not about lack of skill or motivation, it's about the inability to get along with each other. Another thing is about 50% of departures often are the result of relational issues, and a significant drain on organizations, and you can quantify that in terms of the cost of turnover. And they say that about 20% of a manager's average time is spent dealing with people issues and relational problems. So that's a day a week that the average manager deals with conflict and relational issues within their organization. So our advice at the highest level is kind of twofold. Again, recognize that there's the issue of conflict and people and their inability to get along together sometimes, and how impactful that can be. And the other thing is to ensure that upper management, works through the issues and really focuses on the challenges and tries to work through those, rather than doing what is instinct for a lot of people when it comes to conflict, which is two extremes. One is just try to ignore it and hope it goes away. And the other one is to try to suppress it and kind of strong arm it. And that one sounds a lot like, behave, get along, get back to work. And so those two extremes really aren't very artful or helpful when you're dealing with complexities of human relationships and challenges. So we find that savvy managers and upper level executives recognize the need to kind of get into it a bit more, to deal with the real dimensionality of conflict and the relationships, and try to work through those. So in our experience, there's several things that come up. People have real expectations of each other, and those expectations haven't been met, and that's a trigger for conflict. People feel like victims in conflict, and so there's a lot of victimhood that comes up for people. So that's another thing that the upper management can kind of recognize and deal with and try to work through. It's also, we all know this, that there's a real tendency to vilify the other person when you're dealing with conflict. Anything you've done to me, I feel like I'm a victim, and that you're a bad person for doing it. So anyway, all of us can relate to these different things. We've been in conflict ourselves. So in short, we encourage our clients to really deal with the root causes of conflict, to drill down into those different dimensions that I was referring to, and to try to work through the issues rather than just to suppress it. So the other macro point I would make is that we encourage upper management to be aware of the need for some impartiality and some neutrality in dealing with conflict. Upper management are so accustomed to making decisions and kind of being directive, But this work requires that people recognize that the people with the conflict are really the best ones to solve it. Even if it looks like they're like children and they're just unable to work together, you still need to entrust them with the idea that they can solve it themselves if they're given the right resources. And that's much more powerful and much more long lasting if they're able to come up with their own solution to their own problem. So those are some key tips and insights that we find helpful in working with our clients.
A lot to unpack there. I'm going to go back and review that answer for sure. So what are the first steps that you usually take an organization through to get them headed back in the right direction?
Okay, sure. Well, I like to think of it as a two-stage rocket. There's really two stages or phases to our work with clients. And the first one is an assessment to try to find out what's really going on and to find out at first of all, the highest level with upper management, tell us what's happening, what prompts you're contacting InAccord, what's the issues you've been dealing with, what's some of the history here and the challenges you've been facing, what do you want to see happen, et cetera. So just get a kind of high level overview. Who are the people we're going to be dealing with? And then we work down to the individuals that are involved and the key people that are in the conflict and find out what's their experiences. And frankly, we're often looking for whether or not this is a good case for what we do or not. Not every case is suited for what we do, but we really want to explore it and find out individual perspectives and motivations, their concerns, hopes and fears, et cetera. And then we package all that together and we come back to upper management and say one of two things. One, this is a great case. This is exactly what we do. These are good candidates. The case is ripe for resolution. We think we can do this. That's what we say 90% of the time. Sometimes we come back and say, it's just not a good case for us. It's not a good fit for what we provide. And we actually decline to proceed with the case. We don't want to waste clients' time and money and get people's hopes up. So this is all still under kind of the assessment step. And then if we're moving towards a resolution effort where we're going to bring them together, then we're doing the work to package it up, get everybody ready for joint discussions and to work through the issues. That's pretty much the last step in the first phase. And then the second phase is actually bringing the individuals together, helping facilitate their discussions and negotiations. And those are two key words. We're helping people discuss and negotiate through the issues that got them into the conflict. And dialoguing their way through it and to negotiate solutions to the practical issues they're dealing with, as well as the relational issues they've been challenged by, that can be very successful if they're given the opportunity to work it out. So we have like an 80% success rate in terms of getting people to resolution. And please note, these are like the toughest cases that organizations produce. So 80% in our experience is a pretty good batting average. And at the culmination of that, people usually write down what they've committed to. Again, it's their agreement, and the power of the resolution is in the fact that they've come up with this on their own, just with our facilitative help. So they write it down, they sign on to it, upper management can have a copy of that document, and that becomes kind of their contract on how they're going to work with each other going forward. And then the very last thing we do to make sure that this is not just a drive-by resolution effort, but it's one that's going to last over the long term, we'll actually come back and do a check-in session 6 to 8 weeks later to make sure they're still on track and fine-tune any agreements that they've kind of reality checked and worked through on over the period of time since they reached the resolution. So that's a kind of a walk through the process that we use.
So finally, last question. So, most business owners that I know, the leaders, I mean, they are confident and self-reliant, and, sometimes they might, hesitate to seek outside help. How do you help and encourage them to work with an outside resource like yourself? Well,
we really rely initially on their understanding of the situation and their concerns and what they've already tried. And we're not the kind of consultants that are going to come in and tell them what to do or be directive about the situation. As I've indicated, it's kind of an emergent process where we're working with them to come up with solutions to the issues that their employees, their managers, their supervisors, whoever we're working with are dealing with. And yes, we do the C-suite mediations too, and helping the CEO work with the CFO or whoever it is to work through their issues. So what have they tried already? What's their theory about what's going on? What's the history of the conflict? How long have these folks worked together? What percentage been good? What percentage of that's been bad? What are they going to do if it doesn't work out? Even if they bring us in and it still doesn't resolve, what are they going to do? So we want them kind of thinking expansively about all the options and what they're up against. And in the end, we have a lot of information based on what they have shared with us. And we might say it's at the end of that conversation, this sounds like a great case. This is what we do all day long here. We'd like to help you out if you want our help. If not, you don't have to. Maybe there's some other things you can try internally or other avenues you can use. So we're not a panacea for every problem, and not every case is well suited. So there's very soft sales here in terms of what we take on or don't take on. And they really shouldn't, or they don't, and they shouldn't call us unless they've tried some things internally to try to work it out. But I think in the end, most successful leaders recognize that there's value in bringing in experts to deal with situations that are disruptive to their organization. And they're accustomed to doing that in lots of different arenas of their work. So when they call us up, I think they recognize that they need some expertise, and we have 30 years of expertise, done over 2,000 cases like this. We're focused on it. It's what we do all day long, is fix workplace conflict. And we have a proven kind of 5-step process to work through the issues that people are dealing with. If people shuttered their doors and, if we in Accord just shut down because there wasn't any more workplace conflict, we'd be happy as everybody else, right? But in reality, workplace conflict is just a part of life. Most of the time it gets worked out, but every once in a while, there's those 5% or whatever that just get into the conflict spiral and get out of control. And that's when in Accord it fits in to the picture, when we can come in and try to work through things. And as I've indicated, most of the time we can be successful in doing that.
Well, thank you, Chris. It was great to talk to you. I look forward to our next conversation, and you have a great rest of the day.
Okay, Doug, nice to see you again. Thank you very much, and take care.